give attention to prophecy in the book of Daniel, chapter 2, which as we learn and concern ourselves with it, we see that its application comes right to our day, and that the very things it says is what is happening today. You know, in Daniel chapter 2, King Nebuchadnezzar had a dream. And he knew the dream was important, the meaning was important, but the only thing is he couldn't remember what he saw, and he didn't know the meaning. So he, as many dictators do, made a very rough command as he brought his magic practicing priests and wise men before him, and he asked them, he said, I want you not only to tell me what I saw, what the dream means, but I want you to tell me what I saw. He didn't really want to admit that he didn't remember what he had seen. And his magic practicing priests and conjurers and so forth were like, we can't do that. Nobody can do that. You need to tell us a dream so that we can tell you what it means. And so he wasn't going for that. Nebuchadnezzar said, you got to a certain time, and if you don't tell me, I'm just going to kill all y'all. Y'all no good to me. Well, Daniel, when he heard about this harsh order, he came to the king asking for time so that he could pray to God and get an answer to what the dream was. And so he went back and with his companions, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, their real names being Mishael and Azariah and Hananiah, and they prayed to God about it. And God revealed the secret to them, and then they went to the Arioch, the bodyguard, and said, well, let's get access to the king. Do not destroy the men of Babylon, because God has told us what the interpretation is. And then, of course, Arioch, when he goes in there, he says, well, I found somebody who can do it, who can tell you the meaning. He wanted to brag. So the king said to Daniel, can you do it? And Daniel said, well, it's not. He showed that he need not be considered, because really it's God who is letting the king know what is to happen in the final part of the days. And he tells him what his dream is, and he tells him about this statue that he saw. That, as he says, as for you, O king, on your bed, your thoughts turn to what is to take place in the future, and the revealer of secrets has made known to you what is to happen. In verse 31, it says, you, O king, were watching, and you saw an immense image. That image was huge and extremely bright, was standing in front of you, and its appearance was terrifying. The head of that image was of fine gold, its chest and its arms were of silver, its abdomen and its thighs were of copper, its legs were of iron, and its feet were partly of iron and partly of clay. You looked on until a stone was cut out, not by hands, and it struck the image on its feet of iron and of clay and crushed them. At that time the iron, the clay, the copper, the silver, and the gold were all together crushed and became like the chaff from the summer threshing floor, and the wind carried them away so that not a trace of them could be found. But the stone that struck the image became a large mountain, and it filled the whole earth. It says, verse 36, this is the dream, and we will now tell you, the king, its interpretation. So here he sees this large, tremendously large statue, very terrifying statue with various metallic metals. The head of gold, talks about the chest of silver, the abdomen and thighs of copper, and the legs of iron, and the feet iron and clay. So no doubt Nebuchadnezzar was like, wow, okay. Because now he remembers what he saw. Because Daniel told him exactly what the dream was. And so now he's okay. He could be for sure he was going to get to know what the meaning of that dream is. And so this meaning of the dream, as we read it, talks about kingdoms that would come on this earth, and that would eventually be destroyed by God's kingdom. And so what are these kingdoms? Well, in verse 36 it says, "And this is the dream, and we will now tell the king its interpretation. You, O king, the King of kings, to whom the God of heaven has given the kingdom, the might, the strength, and the glory, and into whose hand he has given men, wherever they may dwell, as well as the beasts of the field and the birds of the heavens, and whom he has made ruler over all of them, you yourself are the head of gold." So here he was showing that the first metal part of that statue, which was the head of gold, was Nebuchadnezzar. And therefore it represented the kingdom that Nebuchadnezzar represented. And this kingdom was Babylon. So he was the head of gold. And then verse 39, and as the head of gold, he was the top. He was the best of all the kingdoms, and a world power at that time. And it says, he has made you ruler over all. So he had that status. And then verse 39, but after you another kingdom. So he's talking about kingdoms. Even though Nebuchadnezzar was the king at the time, it really symbolized the Babylonian Empire, the head of gold. But then it says, but after you another kingdom will arise, inferior to you. So this kingdom was represented by the silver, the chest of silver. And then another kingdom, a third one of copper, that will rule over the whole earth. And that was the thighs and the abdomen. And then there's the fourth kingdom. It will be strong like iron. Just as iron crushes and pulverizes everything else, yes, like iron that shatters, it will crush and shatter all these. So here he goes down and shows them, okay. And we learned that, okay, Babylon was the head of gold. Then after it came who else? The Medes and the Persians. They came to rule. And then after them was Greece. And then after them Rome, like a legs of iron. And they ruled a long time, Roman Empire, which is fitting for them to be described as legs, long legs. And so after that, there's the feet of clay and iron. And it says here, as for the fourth king, it will be strong like iron, for just as iron crushes and pulverizes everything else, like iron. That was the Roman Empire. Then verse 41, and just as you saw the feet and the toes to be partly of clay of a potter and partly of iron, the kingdom will be divided, but some of the hardness of iron will be in it, just as you saw the iron mixed with soft clay. And as the toes of the feet were partly of iron and partly of clay, so the kingdom will be partly strong and partly fragile. Just you saw iron mixed with soft clay, they will be mixed with the people, but they will not stick together one to the other, just as iron does not mix with clay. And then it says, in the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed, and this kingdom will not be passed on to any other people. It will crush and put an end to all these kingdoms, and it alone will stand forever. Just you saw that out of the mountain a stone was cut not by hands, and that it crushed the iron, the copper, the clay, the silver, and the gold. The grand God has made known to the king what will happen in the future. The dream is true, and its interpretation is trustworthy. So here, after the Roman Empire, who would rule after that? What would be the next kingdom? It would be a kingdom of clay and iron. It would have strength like iron, but it would have a fragility with clay. because it would be mixed with people, with sons of mankind. Now, who would that be? Who would be? We know the other kingdoms, and there was a video put out 8 years ago by this guy. It's called Unsealed, Daniel Unsealed, and he went by every part of that statute and the metals and how it applied to Babylon, to Persia, to Greece, and to Rome. It was very interesting. But the only thing is, he got the last part wrong about the feet of clay and of iron. He applied it to a religious element. But this is kingdoms. And so that's the only part. I sent him a message about it, but I never got a response. And it had been beautiful if he'd been able to understand and really put it together 100% as far as what the dream is about. But the Watchtower did have it right about the feet of clay and iron, except one thing. They applied it to a Britain and United States Anglo-American world power, and that's really not the case. As we can read in the book of Daniel about the 10 kings that come out of this ferocious beast, which relates to Rome, and this small horn that comes up. But the thing is that the point to be made is not an Anglo-American world power, actually. Here we see, again, as it mentions here, is that it has toes of the feet were partly of iron and partly of clay. Verse 43, the reason why, just as you saw that mixed with soft clay, they'll be mixed with the people, but they will not stick one to the other. And what do we find? This actually applies to America because it's mixed with the people. The people are like navigating the government. They are in the mix as far as what the government does. And because of that mixture, it's fragile. And what is that? First, it starts off with the vote. See, people have a vote. Government for the people, by the people. So that vote sways the kingdom one way or another, and is very fragile because those that want to be in power try to accommodate the people. In other words, in order to get the vote, in order to stay in power. So because of that, that fragility, and many have used the expression fragility, particularly after the Trump presidency and the campaign, we can see that fragility as the people in their vote and they're protesting and they're going against even their own legitimate elections. They demonize one party versus another, Democrats versus Republicans. Now we see they're willing to commit more acts of violence toward one another. And so this makes the kingdom fragile. Russian misinformation showed how fragile the kingdom is because they're able to get in there, spread whatever information they wanted to spread and get people to fall for it, and therefore vote a certain way, and therefore add to the fragility. So with the vote, the civilian population being voted in, and they vote as far as whether this bill passes, that bill passes, Democrats versus Republicans, even though they have one kingdom, not sticking to one another. And many times they can't get anything done because they're at odds with one another. And because they are like that, they waste a lot of money, don't they? And they get into great debt because there's just division. There's fragility there. Now, when America became this world power, wasn't at the beginning of the start of it with the colonies and things. It took years for them to get to that status of being this world power. Particularly, we noticed that in the 20th century that they took that particular status in the world, where we know now the dollar is the standard. They have 800 military bases all over the world, and they're the first to reach and come to development of nuclear weapons. So everything points to America as the feet of clay and iron. And everything about them, and you hear politicians have said it over and over again, fragility, that's the word they use, and that's what it is. Government by the people, for the people. And this is what and it's coming true today. We see it, it's here. And this is the last government that the Bible shows that it'll be a world power. But it shows what will happen in the time of this world power, the United States of America, which is a very interesting term to use when they're very much divided. But it shows how this kingdom that God has made, this kingdom cut out of the mountain, and God makes this kingdom of his, and this kingdom has been made in the days of these kings. In other words, as they rule, God has been bringing about and developing and making this kingdom and those who rule in it. And so eventually that kingdom will continue to grow and grow until the time when it will act and bring an end to all these other kingdoms, and it itself will stand forever. It will, as the Bible shows here, let me find the verse, forgive my eyes, they're not the greatest, but it shows how that in verse 35, it shows how that mountain will fill the whole earth. So this kingdom will rule the earth, and so there will be subjects here upon the earth. And this all relates to when Jesus returns. When he comes back, as Revelation 19 shows, he will, of course, take over and rule the whole entire earth. Get rid of these kingdoms. And why does he get rid of these kingdoms? Because they're ineffective. Just like Babylon in Daniel 5 was weighed in the scales and found wanting, all these kingdoms are found wanting too, because they have no concept of justice. They have no concept of right and wrong. We look at this America. It's about appealing to the people. That makes it fragile. You want to stay in power, you got to appeal to the people. It's like Pontius Pilate moments. You got to give them what they want if you want to stay in power. And so doing what's right is not in the equation. They want to do whatever they want to do, and if you want to be in power, you got to continue to give them what they want, whether it be abortion or same-sexing or racism or whatever it is. Those that want to stay in power have to navigate these murky waters, these fragile situations, and promote one or the other so that they can stay in power. And many, of course, countries around the world have copied America in having democracies in order to come under the protection of the United States. As many NATO countries come under that protection, the United States being the main protector in that NATO alliance. So it's right here to see. And so when you see America, you see what's going on today, what you're seeing is this kingdom that was foretold thousands of years ago by Daniel. God sent Daniel to tell Nebuchadnezzar what was going to happen. And here Nebuchadnezzar was given a view of the world way beyond his lifetime. He was privileged to get to know what would happen. And so now with this last world power here, the United States here, the expectations for God's kingdom are up, very much up. We don't know the day around, but we know that during this rulership of America, that this God's kingdom is going to come, and it will bring about what all human governments cannot bring, and that's true peace and security on this earth, health care that people can depend on, ability to heal all the nations that are obedient from all the wickedness of human rulerships and all the propaganda that has oppressed people. All these things will be available only through God's kingdom, only through the life waters that will flow from that kingdom, the leads for the healing of the nations. That's the only way. And it'll be during that 1,000 years that focus will be healing of the nations and bringing about those wonderful conditions where war will be no more. And there will be no more need for weapons and things of this nature. They'll be all gone. nothing but peace and a feeling that, an understanding, a spirit, an attitude, that you can go anywhere in the world and enjoy those who do the will of God, and thus be family members of yours, as they will all be all over the world. And so this is an interesting prophecy, very interesting. And again, like I said, the guy that did a video on it, he did really good on explaining how each metal applied to each world power. But the only thing he got wrong was that last part, because that's America, and America's here today. And what we know is that eventually, during this time, with America being the world power, Jesus will return, and he will bring an end to this wicked system of things. So again, the Watchtower says it's the Anglo-American world power, but that's not true. America is the one, really, that is what is being said here, and everything they have fits it. And think about the military bases, 800 military bases all over the world. They're the ones that are this world power, the feet of iron and clay, and they fit it to a T as far as what is going on. As we look at now, they're talking about the deficit and lifting the debt ceiling, and look at the struggle that's going on. They're not sticking one another. They're threatening disaster that will affect all nations, and so we can see that they fit what the Bible says. But again, we can look. We don't know the day or hour, but we know that, as the Bible here shows, that this power, the feet of iron and clay, the United States in existence today, is a marker that lets us know that eventually the end will come, and that we will, if we endure to the end, see deliverance take place. Thank you.